everybody. So we're going to talk about WELL, nice and speedily. WELL is the first building certification that is focused on the people, on the health and wellness of the occupants and not on the building itself. And it's about to celebrate 10 years this year, in 2014. I was actually in New Orleans with Sharon when it got rolled out, so 2024. It's been around for a short while, actually, compared to all of the other systems. And it came together as an evidence-based system, so it was based on scientific and medical research on how the environment affects the building occupants, and then integrated with the newest building technology and systems to come up with a new standard. And the premise of WELL is that the well-being is not something that's extra, it's the integral part of what keeps us healthy. And interestingly, your physical and social environment determines your state of health more so than your lifestyle, the medical care, the genes combined. It takes more than 50% of the effect. And what is our physical environment? More than 90% of our time is spent indoors. So it's that environment that determines our health, and that's where WELL comes in. It's a holistic approach. It's not just based on design of the buildings, but it has a policy and an operations aspect. And that's one of the reasons it doesn't have the same breakdown of the tracks as the other systems, but basically it's not really appropriate for single-family residential projects because you usually don't have a policy for your homes, hopefully not. So it is really client-focused. You need to have an organization of some sort, a real estate management company, employer, or somebody to actually run the WELL project. It is very global, slowly growing in numbers, nowhere close to lead. There are also a lot of WELL APs, almost as many as the WELL projects. Have a future one coming up there in the back row. A former student of mine is taking the test in 2 weeks. And it's actually growing quite a bit globally. It was started here in the US, but it's growing. There are more and more projects actually internationally, especially coming from China, is one of the biggest contributors of WELL projects. Its focus, it strives to be equitable, resilient, and as I already mentioned, evidence-based. And the tenets of its governance are, it's based on science. Every part of WELL, every feature of WELL has a scientific study related to it and cross-referenced. It is verifiable and it is also implementable. And the process includes not just verification, but also ongoing monitoring. And this is the system. This is the version 2. Version 1 had 7 concepts, which are essentially categories, which have multiple features, which are essentially credits. This version has 10. And the way I like to remember them, they actually are different parts of your sensory experience, right? The air around you, water, the food you eat, the light, the movement, the temperature in the room. And then it wraps up with mind and community, a couple of the added on in the new system. And as I said, it's designed for all of the types of buildings. There are some prerequisites, but there's a whole library of features, and you essentially customize it based on what your project is and what your project requires. So if you're building a restaurant, there are a lot more food-related things than if you're building an office, right? So you get to pick. And how you do that, there is a digital platform, and you would like that, Sharon, you create your own checklist from the library. And it's points-based at the end, so you have to get the overall number of points. The rating systems of 4 levels, it's pretty similar. That was very much based on LEED. And so you assess the project, you assess the building. Again, it's based on occupied space, so you need to start with the occupation of the space in mind and who's going to be using it as space. Then you implement it through design and construction. You verify both through documentation and a third-party inspector coming to the site and double-checking all of the evaluated person. And then there's the monitoring. And then in 3 years, you get to do it again. So WELL is not once and done type of a certification. It needs to be renewed every 3 years. There is a lighter option, which is well core, and it lets the owner of the building. It needs to be occupied by owner partially, but it lets prepare for the future tenants. So it's slightly different, but again, because it is based, and then the owner determines the policy and monitors the operation. So again, it's based on occupancy, and it does need to be renewed. And if you're looking for an easier entry point, because all this can get really expensive, and the cost really is based on size, so on the size of the project. There are 3 rating systems. So these are not certifications. They're much simpler, and they're performance ratings. So well performance rated, health safety rated. This one came out during COVID for healthy space, and also equity rated. And again, these are not so much building design focused, but more policy and operations focused. And it's something that it's a good entry point for any client to do with their existing space and kind of evaluate and get a little label and a little checklist, and then maybe consider going for certification. And then the community includes well APs, or kind of like lead APs. That I'm one of you. You go, you take a test. There's a lot of continuing education. You can also become well faculty. For that, you apply and your credentials get evaluated. So there's a committee that approves the well faculty, and there's a fee as well. And I contemplated doing that, but it's an ongoing fee too. So. Then finally, there is the option to become a member, and that's for different organizations that can become members. And we're going to have time for a final thought, but where I want to leave this also as a final thought, there's a lot of good information in WELL. There are a lot of good things we can do, even in our own spaces, in our own homes. So it's all published, it's all online, that's all free. Just getting yourself familiar is a great entry point. And then you can take the test and join the community. Thank you.